Hey everyone, welcome to the next episode of Outcomes. I'm your host, Barrett King, and with me today is a special guest, somebody who bridges the gap between partnerships and sales. And so Sean here is actually the head of partnerships and sales at iorad and has done some really cool things in his career. We're going to get into that today. So my friend, welcome to the show.
Barrett, great to be here. Thanks for having me.
It's my pleasure. I think one of the things that I'm excited about most today in our dialogue is that, everyone knows I tend to talk to guests before for a minute or two. You did something really cool to get my attention. I reached out to you, obviously, to have you on the show. I thought you had a really cool background, really interesting experience that you can contribute to our audience. But then you did something really unique, I would say, in your case. You sent me a loom, right? So I ask every guest, what does partnership mean to you? How you think about your go-to-market superpowers? Some questions I ask ahead of time so I can get to know folks as they join the show. You did the opposite. You said, well, let me tell you about myself. And you brought this very scrappy, very kind of like hands on the ground, boots on the ground rather attitude in terms of the loom. So let's talk about that in a second. Before we do, I got to ask the question, what does partnerships mean to you?
Yeah. So I would say the partnership word is an odd term that gets thrown around in weird context. For me, it's just about two various parties getting together to remove friction for hopefully their end customer, if we're talking about this in a commercial environment. Just working better. I know it's the better together story gets blurred a little bit, but to me, that's really what it's about. A mutual agreed upon relationship that's serving an end audience.
I like that. It's true, right? I mean, at the end of the day, it's the mutual outcome stuff, the better together stories, everything you described, but I can't, I'm really fixated on it. So let's talk about the loom that you sent me, because I think it's so interesting. So again, for context for everybody, I send out a form as a part of this. You get on the show, we have a quick conversation before, and I get to know folks. What Sean did was really interesting. He helped me get to know him by sending over a little bit of an about me, a little bit of his storyline. Is that something you've done throughout your career, is sort of like think outside the box like that? That was really interesting.
Yeah, I would say that the scrappiness is something that's just kind of built into my DNA for sure. I think what I found early on, I actually owned a couple of businesses early in my career, and I had to learn the hard way what it was like to try to stand up an organization and look and sound a lot more professional than I actually was, like when I was a teenager. So I had to fake a lot of that stuff and figure out what would actually resonate. And it caused me to have to think through this empathy lens, what the other person is caring about, what would deliver, and what can I make them feel about a situation, right? They're not going to remember words I said. They're not going to remember a thing I did. They're going to remember a feeling from that. You don't remember what I said in that video. You just remember going, oh, that was cool. Sean did that thing, and now I think he's cool, right? It's all it is just that gut feeling. And so I know that if you're a podcast host and you're having guests on, it's a little hairy to be thinking about, like, is this person viable? Can they string a sentence together? So I can feel that would be a scenario you would be experiencing. So if I can get scrappy and go, what can I do to show, not tell them about myself? Well, look, this is what it would be like to interview me. We're going to be on video. Here's a video. You can make that decision for yourself. So just an example of just like put it out there and show versus just like aimlessly talking about something.
Yeah, it's smart because it humanized you, right? I mean, again, we've been in each other's ellipses for a while, and I'd say I'm a fan of yours. I strike it, or it seems like rather you're a fan of mine. And so we can say as much as we want that we would be a good match to have a conversation, but especially in a format like this where it's meant to be very quick and tactical and intentional, I can imagine, and I've experienced it, I've talked to folks that just aren't a good fit for the show, and that's okay. That's part of this process, and I actually quite enjoy getting to know people, but it was a very unique methodology. So are you, like, if we apply that to your job now, right? You're running, well, actually, before I make the assumption, so tell us what you do to frame it out for our conversation. What's your role right now?
Yeah. So I am the head of sales and partnerships, which sounds like it's a crazy dual effort, but they are very one and the same in the way our business is structured. So iorad, the company I work for, is a tutorial building tool. So through this sort of removal of friction that I mentioned, how we think about partnerships, we had a recognition, direct feedback from customers that they would come into our tool to build step-by-step tutorials, and they would hit this inflection point where they didn't know where to put those tutorials. And it was actually impeding them from signing up for accounts, moving forward, upgrading. And we realized that they really wanted to put them in whatever application they stored knowledge base. Maybe it was their CRM, maybe it was their learning management system, what have you. And we realized that was actually where they wanted to consolidate and do the work in our system. And so it actually turned the lens for us to be viewing those end partners or those platforms as partners, the real customer of ours, because they own the audience and the space. And so it was really just a shift of how can we better support our end users? And it was actually through reseller partners, channel and referral partnerships. So that's really where it came about. And it was just a shift from going, hey, the direct customer is not served best by me selling them this additional subscription contract that they need to manage, additional login they need to manage. Why don't we meet them where they've already had budget alignment, allocated resources for a learning management system or whatever it happened to be? And so that's why I've shifted into this partner role. And it's really just like, it's a culmination of just thinking really deeply through that customer lens. And we still do a little direct sales, which is why that's still in our title, but it's primarily through these partner lens.
Yeah, that's cool. The combination of those two is really important because I've talked to a variety of guests about this. The term partner, it's funny. I had this post for LinkedIn. I almost put up the other day. I was talking to somebody in sales who was like, yeah, and all the partners that we have. And I said, what do you mean by partner? She's like, no, it's really simple. Like, the prospects, the people that we're going after, we partner with them. And I was like, no, you don't. No, you don't. You're selling them something. It might be a solution. It might help them get better. I don't want to necessarily negate the value, but like we talk about partnership, it's long-term relationship. It's about growing together. It's about solving for a mutual customer and an outcome. And then you're talking about you yourself and the overlap and looking at the intersection of value between what your customer is getting from you and then where in the market there's somebody else adding to that value bubble, if you will, that value bucket, maybe to help that actually grow a little bit more. So, if I combine the two questions that I had before, one in terms of have you used this kind of scrappy thing long tail, you said you had earlier on in your career. How do you use it now then to develop the partnerships and the relationships you're actually going to market with together?
Yeah, tactical examples, right? So we're always thinking about value first, thinking through the empathy lens of, yes, we know where the customer wants to put us. So we're identifying a group of potential partners. And I'm trying to get Scrappy to think about how to break through that noise, right? Everyone approaches the agencies and the major players like the CRMs that you're familiar with, who everyone is trying to tackle and bring in. So what is the creative way that we can break through the noise, right? So I'll use things like video, or I'll think about what they may be caring about. So as an example, I had a partner that we were in negotiation, but was kind of stalled. And I realized that one of the major things they were struggling with was they needed a VP of sales. And they just were stuck. They could not actually execute on anything like their own internal go-to-market as well as any new partnerships without this person in place because someone left them unexpectedly. So before I ever tried to push any other, of our initiatives, I was like, well, let me just see if I know anyone from my network. So I basically went on LinkedIn, grabbed 4 really viable candidates from my network, introduced them all to that team and said, hey, listen, this would be a really great VP of hire. I know them personally. I've either worked with them, for them, or in some kind of capacity. You should grab an interview if they look viable, right? And I just grabbed a video, showed what I liked about them, where I thought they were unique, and then sent that over to the partner. No ask, nothing, right? Like, in the back end, yes, subliminally, it was solving my problem because without the VP of sales, I can't work with them as a partner. But sure. I know just being a good human that like they needed that role. And that's something I can actually help them with. So why not just extend, again, show them, don't tell them that I'm going to be helpful. That inks that partnership it just put an accelerator on everything because they're like, if you're willing to put this level of value and work in before we ever sign a contract, what is it going to be like when we're actually working together? So it's putting forth a little bit ahead of time before you can, get that ROI on value. And that's what I think is just a tactical example of getting scrappy, reading between the lines and the show versus tell.